This is what I might need.
You read the continuity of operations plan?
I did.
All I was thinking about was the clerk's office. And essential function during election year.
He actually was eating a leftover roll from
I thought.
Rotary, and it was so delicious, and I sure had had this over.
What you missing?
Oh, it was just this 2 o'clock.
What a shame.
Can we come to, meeting is in, I'll call the meeting into order. Thank you. I call the meeting into order. It's 2 minutes past 6 o'clock. The Township Board would ask all of those present to join us in a moment of silence to commemorate the sudden passing of Dr. Valerie Johnson. Dr. Valerie Johnson is a longtime resident in Meridian Township and the wife of one of our lead attorneys. And if you will, join me in a few minutes of silence to commemorate her sudden passing. Thank you. And now, if you will join me, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Lemaster, would you call the roll?
Supervisor Jackson.
Here.
Clerk Guthrie.
Here.
Treasurer DeShane.
Present.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Here.
Trustee Sundlin.
Here.
Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda is presentations. We do not have one tonight. And so we'll move on to item 5, which is citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. I have a green card for public comment from, is it Carrier or Carla? Carla Hudson.
Good evening. My name is Carla Hudson. I live on Skyline Drive, for the record. I care deeply about public transportation and hope to become your next Meridian Township CATA board member. For 30 years, Meridian has been the place for my family to live, grow, and participate, even though I am unable to drive. I know the value of strong, responsive, and efficient transportation systems on the lives of seniors, persons with disabilities, and on others who cannot drive. I have board experience and served on a governor-appointed statewide barrier-free access board where I served for 7 years under 2 governors. I have influenced community transportation through my work on the Meridian Transportation Commission. Thank you for considering me for membership on the CATA board. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there others that would like to speak to the board at this time? Seeing none, then we'll move on to item 6 on our agenda, Township Manager's Report.
Thank you, Supervisor and Board. Appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening.
Next month is February, so we're preparing for a Black History Month celebration with the township. There's been some news out there about our rental inspection program. I can assure you it has my full attention. We are not where we want to be following COVID. Director Schmidt and I have had some conversations about that. He's on top of it, and I can tell you by this summer, we will be back to full speed and be up to par and where we need to be. I want to speak briefly about the Nob Hill fire. I'm not going to speak about the excellent response from our departments and everything that's occurred. I think we all know that, and it's probably more for the board to discuss under your comments. But I want to address one rumor that's out there. It's important that we address that, and that is that there were no smoking work alarms. There was nothing alerting anyone about what was going on with the fire. That's completely false. If you go back and look at the body cams of the police department, if you speak to the people who were on site, the smoke alarms were going off all over the place. So I want to dispel that rumor because it's really important that it was tied into the story about us being behind on inspections. I also want to address some comments about the Nob Hill inspection that was not covered by the press. As you know, they put a snippet in and they don't rest. Nob Hill was inspected back starting in 20 or 25 years ago, every 3 years. Nob Hill is 96, 99, 02, 05, 08, 11, 14, 17. Every 3 years, Nob Hill has been. Maybe I should say that. May I continue? Yes, you may. Nob Hill is what was reported is the smoke alarms were not working. That's not true, and that we had not inspected Nob Hill, and we have inspected Nob Hill. We have a perfect record going back almost 25 years. We did get hung up during COVID, and we need to get back on to where we need to be. There's also another issue with Meridian Township that's coming up with our fire coverage and medical coverage. As you know, we have an agreement to provide fire coverage. With the recent loss of the ambulance service now, we are now involved in covering that area with a medical response. And it's an additional task burden on our department and our residents and our firefighter paramedics. Rest assured that issue has our attention. Chief Hamill and I plan to meet with Delhi Township next week, and Chief Plaga will participate as well because his department responds with medical first response. The reason we're meeting with Delhi is Delhi Township has the contract to provide those services to Meridian Township. So it's kind of convoluted, but just know we have an agreement for fire that's been in place for a very long time. It's been here well before my decade here, but we've not been the first responder for medical. That is the case right now. That we're running several calls a month out to Meridian Township for medical coverage. Mason building permits. We've been providing building services and planning and site plan review services to Mason for a long time. Predates my decade here. We did an analysis, Director Schmidt did an analysis with the help of Director Garber of the Finance Department. Where are we and what's the cost? And our cost last year was around $88 an hour for what it cost Meridian Township, totality, everything, to provide that service. And we have not raised that fee since 2015, which is $100 an hour. So we're getting close to just kind of a break even, and we have to decide whether that's really worth our services. So we'll be coming to you probably in the next 60 days with an update on a cost benefit analysis and fees, and have you review that and tell us what you'd like to see, what direction you'd like to see. The DEI committee meets on January 20th. The next task for us is to bring together objectives and goals and put together an action plan going forward to bring to the board. We're meeting on the 19th here. Our entire team in this building is meeting on the 19th to talk about the renovation project, which is not ready to kick off, but we want to make sure everyone knows what the schedule might be. If you're interested, on March 16th is the first hearing on the Ponds lawsuit. So if you want to attend that case in Judge Stokes, the Honorable Judge Stokes' office down in Mason, that is March 16th, and I can get you a time if you're interested. Thursday, Supervisor Jackson and Trustee Wazinski and myself will be meeting with the current interim president, Woodruff, at Michigan State University. That's a looking forward to that meeting. It's been a while since we've met with MSU. From everything I'm hearing, President Teresa Woodruff is a breath of fresh air to this community and this university. So I know that I'm personally looking forward to meeting with her and getting to know her. Our 5 new police officers are underway and out on the road, not by themselves, but they're in their training. The municipal signs, a project we've been working on for a very long time, you should start to see in the next few weeks those signs going up. The Okemos Road Bridge, it's a county project. Thank you, county. They're paying the entire $8 or $9 million for the project. It is still ongoing. They're doing the best they can, working in the conditions that they are. Hopefully next month we'll have the bridge opening. And finally, the marijuana issue was in front of the Planning Commission last night, and I'm sure you'll be hearing a report on that coming up. And probably looks like the marijuana may be coming to the board next month. Next month. So you have a lot to look forward to. You're going to be vetting here in the next few months. That's my report, unless you have any questions.
Okay. Board members have questions at this time? Thank you, Mr. Walsh. We now come to board member reports of activities and announcements. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you, Supervisor. Instead of my standard board report, I want to take this time to thank the Meridian community for their really great generosity for helping the 31 families who were left homeless by the Nob Hill apartment fire last month. Meridian Township has received over $121,000 in cash donations for those families. Due to this enormous outpouring of generosity, each family has received nearly $3,800 in cash to help them find new housing and replace some of their lost possessions. There's also been tens of thousands of dollars in meals, clothing, beds, luggage, furniture, other items donated by our community to help these families. This generosity is just phenomenal. I've said it before, we are a very generous community, but even this has amazed even me. We should all be really proud to live here in Meridian Township. Our manager, Frank Walsh, deputy manager, Dan Opsimer, and fire chief, Mike Hamill, and police chief, Ken Plaka, have each put in extraordinary effort to help these families and to these displaced families were safe, and even put on a Christmas party for them. And these families received an enormous number of Christmas gifts as well. Lastly, the DTN Management Company, which owned the property, has been, in my view, extraordinarily cooperative in the investigation and in working with each of these families to find new housing. The community has really come together for this, and we have a lot to be proud of as we're trying to help these families find new housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members? Trustee Sunderland.
Thank you, Supervisor. I just wanted to report that I attended the Economic Development Corporation meeting on January 5th. I need to announce that we are going to have a Lunar New Year celebration on January 29th at the Meridian Mall. It's from 1 until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I don't believe that we've had that for the last couple years. So this is coming back to the Meridian Mall, and it's just a cute little event to support the Lunar New Year celebration. So come out and see what they have to offer. And we just kind of talked about MABA meetings throughout the year and different awards. I do know that at least tonight's agenda, we're talking about Meridian Township awarded $25,000 Match on Main Award, which is part of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, what we do. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I attended the Community Resource Commission meeting on December 14th. And as you know, the CRC is the oversight body, the policy body for Meridian Cares. And the extraordinary work that was undertaken through the township, through Meridian Cares, to raise funds, to provide for the families, has just been absolutely amazing. So I wanted to let the community know that there is a coat closet, which also has household goods, clothing, personal products. That is ongoing at Faith Lutheran Church on Dobie Road, and it opened today to anyone in the township who needs those kinds of resources. It's free and available in the mornings from 10 until 12, Monday through Friday. So I'd like to encourage you to go there if you need that kind of resource. And it's just an outgrowth of our response to the Nob Hill fire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the board? Well, I would just add that I concur completely with the sentiments, comments that were made by the treasurer about the generosity and the care with which Meridian Township responded to residents in an unfortunate circumstance and event. But I would also like to note the assistance provided by other members of our region and our neighbors, first responders, included firefighters from several surrounding communities, the American Red Cross. And so, in addition, we live in a very competent and caring region. And they responded in Meridian Township and to Meridian Township's emergency in a exemplary way. I would also add that, as has been noted, the participation in the religious community, the business community, many individuals, and these nonprofit organizations like the Red Cross. And I believe that Meridian Township is very grateful for the assistance we received from the other members of our area. One additional comment about Trustee Sunderland's notation about the Lunar New Year. I learned today in the Rotary meeting that there are also Lunar New Year celebrations at both the Hazlitt and the Okemos libraries coming up. And so I would encourage you to participate in those celebrations as well. If there are no other comments or announcements by board members, we'll move on to item 8, which is the approval of the agenda. Treasurer DeShane.
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Support.
The motion is to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. And the motion passes. We now move to the consent agenda, which, as usual, contains communications to the board, minutes of the December 13 regular township board meeting, and the manager's bills. Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move the consent agenda as presented.
Support. It's moved and supported to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Lemaster, I believe we need a roll call vote.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. With no questions for the attorneys and no hearings for the night, item 12 starts with item 12A, 1673 Hazlitt Road Brownfield Plan Amendment. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. So the request in front of you this evening is as the supervisor mentioned, the First Amendment to the Brownfield Plan at 1673 Hazlet Road, more commonly now referred to as the American House of Meridian, previously known as Pine Village. The public hearing was held on this December 13th of last year by the board. There were no major concerns raised. The Meridian Township Brownfield Redevelopment Authority has previously reviewed this plan and has recommended approval in its current form. The long and the short of it is, now that we know the actual costs of construction, what happened was the value went up, the tax increment revenue then went up accordingly, and the eligible activities are reduced substantially because this plan will no longer be responsible for the demolition of the old L&L grocery store on the adjacent parcel. That is now covered by the Hazlet Village Square Brownfield Plan. So the upshot of all this, there'll be slightly over $1.24 million of tax increment revenue captured over 4 years of this plan. This plan went from 15 years to 4 years. 1.12 roughly of that is eligible to be reimbursed to the developer if they have the eligible expenses in the plan. $62,000 will go towards local administration, $62,000 will go towards the Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund. The last piece, as we've mentioned on these plans previously, is the determination of the public purpose. We have listed several options that we believe this project meets in our staff review, and really have no major concerns with this request. This is, I have to be honest, this is the shortest Brownfield plan I've ever seen in my career. And it certainly has dramatically changed to the better, although I'm certain the applicant wishes the costs weren't so high at this point. But it is a very good plan, and as you can see, they are moving along quite quickly. So the applicant and the representative are here this evening if there are any questions, but at this time, staff does recommend approval of the First Amendment to the Brownfield Plan for the project at 1673 Hazlet Road.
Thank you. Is there a board member who would like to move? Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to adopt the resolution approving the First Amendment to the Brownfield Plan for the American House of Meridian project at 1673 Hazlet Road, with a total increment revenue to be captured not to exceed $1,244,299, $1,119,869 maximum to the developer over a 4-year capture period.
Support. Supported by Trustee Wazinski. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor, and I appreciate the update and the recap from Director Schmidt, as it's been a couple of weeks since we last were convened on this matter. It's all good things. Lower costs, lower time period. I was trying to quickly go back and see if we had already approved a brownfield for the Hazlet Village. I couldn't recall if we had done that already.
We did. That was approved on, if you give me just a second here.
Yeah, as far back as November 1st in my.
I don't have the exact date, but it was approved in the fall.
Sometime in the fall.
Yes, it was approved in the fall.
So this is an attempt to not double dip, basically, on the L&L site and the other sites around it, which of course we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we don't allow. So I'm happy to support this motion to circumscribe it to just the area that they are working on, and I'm pleased that we've reduced the timeline significantly.
Yes. Trustee Wazinski, do you have additional comments?
Sure, Trustee Hendrickson said it well, but it's necessary, and I appreciate the staff taking the time to do this. And I agree that it just makes sense that we'll pull that parcel out so we can move on and continue with development.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you. I have one question for Director Schmidt. In the resolution, in the first whereas, I'm confused by the language. It says Hudson Hazlet LLC has previously received approval of for a brownfield plan. Is there supposed to be something?
The of, I apologize, that of shouldn't be there. It's for a brownfield plan.
Okay. So I would agree, as long as we can strike out the of there, I don't think we need to.
Thank you very much.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
All right. Treasurer Deschênes.
A question and a comment. Director Schmidt, why did they ever include the L&L property in their original brownfield agreement, since they don't own that property and that will be covered by the second phase of this development by a different developer?
Yeah, so it was under unified ownership originally, and I think the intent was that this project would be able to fiscally carry it, and it would jumpstart development on the neighboring property too. Trying to put some pressure on the property owner to get that secondary project moving.
Okay, thank you. And my comment is, I too support this. I like the shorter duration. Brownfields are better than tax increment financing TIFs because the state is really carrying the burden here. This money comes essentially out of this state education tax compared to a TIF, which comes out of CATA, all of our, Ingham County, all those different municipalities, even the township have to agree to give up the increase in value. With a brownfield, we don't have to go and make that case to all those different entities. It's covered by the state. So it's much more appealing locally to have a brownfield as compared to a TIF. So they support this. Thank you.
Are there others? Okay, then the question is to adopt a resolution approving the first amendment to the Brownfield Plan for the American House of Meridian Township project. For this vote, we need a roll call. Mr. Lemaster?
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer Deschênes,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. The next item, 12B, is ordinance 2022-15, daycare regulation update, introduction. And Mr. Schmidt will take care of that as well.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Again, this was discussed at the December 13th board meeting. The change is what you have in front of you is a change to our definitions to align with Public Act 106/2002. Functionally, what it does is it changes in family child care homes, it allows up to 7 now, where previously 6 was permitted, and in group child care homes, it allows for 14 children instead of 12, which were previously permitted. This is to align us with the state law, and the Planning Commission has previously reviewed this and recommended approval of it. Staff has raised no major concerns, and we would recommend that the board approve for introduction this evening, the ordinance amendment. We will then publish it as prescribed by law and bring it back for final adoption.
Okay. Trustee Wilson?
Move to adopt the resolution approving for introduction zoning amendment 2022-15 to amend the zoning ordinance of the Charter Township of Meridian at section 86-2 to update the definitions of family child care home and group child care home, increasing the number of children permitted in each category to be consistent with state law.
Support.
Been moved and by Trustee Wilson, supported by Trustee Wazinski. Trustee Wilson?
The reason we're doing this is to be in alignment with state law. So to me, it's something that is essential for us to change in our zoning ordinance. So that's the reason that I'm voting to approve it.
And Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. I would agree. We have no choice in a sense. But I know that some people may have concerns about increasing the number of children within those two categories. And I can just say from experience, my very close friend is a daycare provider and was my daycare provider. And there is still regulations on age groups. So there's only a certain amount allowed within an infant, toddler, and then what they call preschool. So it still keeps that ratio still somewhat spread throughout the organization as well. So I will be supporting.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Schmidt, could I ask you to clarify the difference in the definition of a family child care home and a group child care home?
Yeah, so these are terms that are specifically laid out in state law because local municipalities are preempted from regulating family childcare homes. That was added to the Zoning Enabling Act several years ago, that we have no say over those. You can have a family childcare of up to 6 persons, 7 if this is adopted, without any say from us. Group childcare home is then the larger version of that, where they recognize there potentially could be an impact on the neighborhood, so the state does allow us to regulate those through a special use permit process. That is the slightly larger of the two, and once you get beyond that, you get into a commercial use. It becomes a group childcare center. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer DeShane.
And just to be clear, while this ordinance change allows for these facilities to operate in the township, we are in no way in the business of licensing or regulating these facilities, correct?
So to the extent that we do have special use permit provisions for group childcare homes. So once you get beyond 7, you do have to get a special use permit and follow local regulations, but the vast majority of the regulation and licensing is from the state.
Thank you.
We're ready for the question? Then this will be a voice vote. The question is to adopt a resolution amending the zoning ordinances in the township to update definitions and to increase the number of children in these 2 types of facilities. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 12C is board and commission appointments. I have previously provided the board with my recommendations for appointments to the township boards and commission vacancies. And so the first involves the Board of Review, and I look for a motion relative to my recommendations of Kathy Burchin and Brandon Brooks to the Board of Review for term ending, et cetera. Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to appoint Kathy Burchin to the Board of Review for a term ending 12/31/24.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. And the chair votes yes. The motion passes unanimously. We then move to the Community Resources
I'm
Commission.
sorry, there was one other one.
Yeah,
One
we
other.
left out Brandon. We
Oh,
left
I'm
out Brandon
sorry.
Brooks.
I didn't mean to.
The motion.
Who split the?
I'm sorry, I might be looking at the old version of the packet, I'm realizing. They're together on the new packet. So I guess we would need a second motion. It's cleaner for me to think of it as 2 motions
Okay.
anyway, I guess, but I'll move to appoint Brandon Brooks to the Board of Review for a term ending 12/31/24.
Okay.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. All in favor of the motion to appoint Brandon Brooks to the Board of Review, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes, and the motion passes unanimously. And now, there is in fact a revised memo that puts the 2 recommendations together in one motion. And so we will proceed then to the Community Resources Commission, for which there are 4 vacancies. The chair is recommending the appointment of Karen Webster and Narendra Turamello to the Board of Review, to the, am I in the right place? Community Resources Commission.
Yeah.
Yes. Someone who would make the motion? Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. I move to appoint Karen Webster and Narendra Turamella to the Community Resource Commission for a term ending 12/31/2024.
Is there support for motion?
Support.
Support by Mr. Hendrickson. You have any comments you'd like to make? Mr. Brzezinski?
No.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to appoint Karen Webster and Narendra Chiramello to the Community Resources Commission, please, all in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? No. The motion passes unanimously. And we move to the Local Officials Compensation Commission, which has 2 vacancies. My recommendations are to appoint Joyce Vancouvering and Steve Vagnuzzi. Apparently, on this motion, they're separate. They're 2 motions. So, Mr. DeShane.
I move to appoint Joyce Vancouver to the Local Officials Compensation Commission for a term ending 12/31/2023.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson.
Joyce has served on other boards and commissions before, including the Pension Commission, and is very able and will serve this commission very ably as well.
Agreed.
Trustee Wilson? All right. And so, all in favor of the motion to, we'll deal with these as 2 separate ones since they're printed that way. The motion to appoint Joyce Vancouvering to the Local Officials Compensation Commission for a 1-year term, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no.
I'm not opposing. I just have something for the next. When you address someone, I just have a comment.
Okay.
I'm not opposing.
I recognize I'm moving a little slower here tonight. So we are voting on the appointment of Joyce Vancouvering at this point. Right. We have voted for Joyce Vancouvering. The count, I believe we've completed that. It's a unanimous vote. And so we will now move to appoint Stephen Vagnuzzi to the Local Officials.
Okay, I move to appoint Steve Agnozzi to the Local Officials Compensation Commission for a term ending 12/31/2026, which is 3 years later than Joyce's term.
Okay.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. All in favor? Do you have further comments?
Again, Steve has served on the Transportation Commission. In fact, I think he currently chairs it, done an excellent job, and he'll make a great member of this commission as well.
Okay.
I agree. I know Steve, and I think he'll do a good job.
All right. All in favor of the motion?
Yes.
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 Opposed to the motion? Please say no. Chair votes yes, and Steve Vagnuzzi is appointed to the Local Officials Compensation Commission for the terms noted. The next, yes.
I just wanted the record to reflect in the motions that it's Local Officials Compensation Commission, not compension.
Yes.
So when that's written up for the minutes, that's reflected in the minutes, the correct verbiage. Thank you.
Thank you. The next group is the Downtown Development Authority, where there are 5 vacancies. At this time, I'm recommending the appointment of Angela Wright to the Downtown Development Authority. Is there a motion? And so, Trustee Hendrickson?
I move to appoint Angela Wright for Downtown Development Authority for a term ending 12/31/25.
Support.
You have further comments to make? Okay, the motion is to appoint Angela Wright. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Oppose, no. Then the motion passes. The chair votes yes, and the motion passes unanimously. The Planning Commission has 3 vacancies. I will move to approve the appointment of Milton Scales to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/24. Is there support for the motion?
Support.
Mr. DeShane supports the motion. I would say, since I'm making the motion, that Mr. Scales has served the township in several capacities before. He is very desirous of serving on the Planning Commission at this time, and that is why I am essentially making this appointment. Mr. DeShane?
Milton and I ran for public office together in 2012, got to know him then and know him to this day, and he has excellent experience both on the board and on the Planning Commission and other commissions as well.
Okay. Mr. Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Just to clarify, I believe you stated verbally that you're making the motion for a 3-year term ending 12/31/24. I think you may have meant 12/31/25.
24.
That would be 3 years from now.
No, in fact, we had
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong memo again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I get for reading all the old material.
There are three vacancies with different.
24. Yep, you're right. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Get rid of that old material
I'm just-
page. Shut that down.
That's where the truths must
Thank
be.
you. My apologies.
That's okay.
Could we have clarification on that, please?
The clarification is that there are three vacancies. Some are, two of them have to do with completing terms. One is a new term. The motion to appoint Mr. Scales as for a term ending 12/31/24. All right? That clarify, all in favor of the motion to appoint Milton Scales to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/24, please say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. Then Mr. Scales is appointed to the Planning Commission for the term cited. I move to approve the appointment of Mr. James McCurtis to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/25. Mr. Hendrickson.
Support.
All right, and I will note that Mr. McCurtis is a township resident. I believe he lives in Okemos, and he was also a candidate or one of the applicants for the position of township trustee who were replacing members on the township board. So all in favor of the motion to approve Mr. James McCurtis to a planning commission term ending 12/31/25, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. The chair votes yes, and Mr. McCurtis is appointed to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/25. And finally, I move to approve the appointment of Mr. Brandon Brooks to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/23.
Support.
Would you like to?
I've gotten to know Mr. Brooks recently, and I'm excited he's going to serve on the board. A little bit younger than some of our appointees, and I think his energy and knowledge will be a great assistance to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. I will also note that Mr. Brooks has only lived in the township for a few years, but he is very enthusiastic about taking on this task. And let's see, I believe you will note and remember that he is also being appointed appointed to the Board of Review. So all in favor of the appointment of Mr. Brandon Brooks to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/23, please say yes.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, and opposed? Please say no. Thank you. The board has unanimously approved Mr. Brandon Brooks to the Planning Commission for a term ending 12/31/23. In the memo, we also note at least one vacancy on the Transportation Commission. The name of Myron Frierson is offered for membership on the Transportation Commission for two-year term ending 12/31/24. Mr. DeShane.
I move to appoint Myron Frierson to the Transportation Commission for a two-year appointment ending on 12/31/2024.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wazinski. Mr. DeShane, further comments?
Transportation Commission is a newer commission. One of our most recent ones created is the outgrowth of the CATA Ready Ride Committee, and does great work, and they've been particularly focused on non-motorized transportation and other alternative transportation sources, as well as making the most of our investment in CATA. I'm sure he'll make an excellent addition to this commission.
Okay, further comments? All in favor of the motion to appoint Myron Frierson to the Transportation Commission for a two-year term, please say yes.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Opposed, please say no. So Mr. Myron Frierson is appointed to the Transportation Commission for a two-year term ending 12/31/24. Trustee Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I would like to thank our members of the community for applying to public service and for serving on the boards and commissions. I think there's over 20 boards and commissions, and there's other organizations. As we talked about earlier, just the way in which our community engages and steps up to help one another. And this is one of those ways in which our community members steps up to help our community. We're not a sole board. We don't work individually. We work together as a unified group, and we work together with our other boards and commissions. And so I'm thankful for our community members stepping up to serve the public. And I also want to, in addition, thank those who came here tonight, Carla Hudson, Milton Scales, and Kathy Burchin for coming here to the meeting tonight. I've known Milton and Kathy for a number of years. Kathy's a neighbor of mine. Has incredible expertise in real estate. She's a wonderful person and a wonderful neighbor, and has given a lot to our community. Milton Scales, I've known him for a number of years as well. He previously served on the township board, and he always had value-added comments and statements as a township board member, and has helped the schools out with diversity at the two high schools, forming some really valuable groups that are serving there today. And he's done a number of other community service, types of community services for our community. And Carla Hudson, while I don't know her personally, I've had a number of extremely well thought out exchanges and email conversations, just excellent, an excellent asset to giving a new perspective to things. And so I look forward to all of these members serving on our boards and commissions.
Thank you. I would also add a thank you to past members, members who have recently left these boards and commissions for whatever reason. And we thank you for your service, and we look forward to your continuing to work with us and communicate with us in whatever capacity you see fit. At this time, we will move to the item D, which is Supervisor Pro Tem appointment. And at this time, I would like to if you'll give me a moment to catch my I would like to move that the board appoint through December 31, 2023, to act as Courtney Kwasinski, trustee Courtney Kwasinski, to act as supervisor pro tem at any meeting of the township board wherein the supervisor is absent.
Support.
There's a support from, was that Mr. Hendrickson? All right. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it's an important function for continuity's sake, that we have someone who's able to step up in absence of the supervisor, who, at least since I've been here, has not yet been absent, so it may be an emeritus position. I do have a question about this, which is one of my bits of light reading that I've been doing over the holiday season is to go back and take a look at our board rules. It's just something I've been curious about, learning more about. And those rules get intersected with this packet and this motion, because the rules do indicate that the procedure for a supervisor pro tem is to appoint them at the beginning of a meeting where the supervisor is absent. It's Rule 6.1, I believe. And so I'm wondering, are we going to run into any issues in terms of violating our board rules by making this motion here tonight? So I would mention that for consideration of this item, which is not to say that Courtney wouldn't be a terrific supervisor pro tem. I just don't want to get us in trouble with ourselves.
Sure.
for violating our own rules.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. My understanding was that the appointment of Supervisor Pro Tem before the meeting started is when the supervisor's absent, but that the board at the beginning of the year approves who that person's going to be for the rest of the year. Is that correct? Either the township manager or deputy township manager? That was my understanding of the reading of the policy when I first came on board a few years ago. So it is, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I would like clarification in that regard as well.
Yeah, I've got them pulled up here. If I could, I'll be happy to read them. 6.1, chairperson, the supervisor shall chair all meetings of the board. The township board shall select a chair pro tem in the absence of the supervisor. Procedure. In the absence of the supervisor, the clerk shall call the meeting to order. The first order of business will be the nomination and election of a chair pro tem.
All right. Now, I would ask the township manager to talk about historically how we have handled this appointment. We have used this appointment.
So I wish I had a clear answer for you. I can go back 10 years, and I'll do it briefly, about how it's been done. It's interesting that Mr. Scales is in here for this discussion. Correct me if I'm wrong in any place. So going back 10 years ago with Supervisor LeGoff, the first 2 years, then Treasurer Brixey was made the Supervisor Pro Tem at the beginning of the year, and she administered any meetings that Supervisor LeGoff could not attend. As time went on, that changed to then Trustee Opsmer was made Supervisor Pro Tem for a couple of years. And that was done at the beginning of the year. And he sat in and chaired any meetings where the supervisor could not attend. And that then transferred, I can't remember the exact order, I believe it was trustee then Jackson served in that capacity for a couple years, and then it transferred, I believe, to trustee Opsimer. People correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't prepared for this, but I'm going from memory now. So you had it done that way all along. Then in 2016, summer of 2016, when Supervisor DeGoff was not running for office again, she was not able to attend a number of meetings. And at that point, there were two trustees, then trustee Scales and trustee Stika, and they changed the way they did it during that summer. They went back and forth where trustee Scales or trustee Stika, and I even believe trustee Wilson at one time,
Not me.
the former trustee Wilson, but not the former trustee Angela Wilson actually presided over a meeting. So they moved it around, and it was done at the beginning of the meeting. Clerk called the meeting to order, and it followed the board rule that is in place. It's been done a number of ways. As I just thought about this, sitting here listening, one way that I would offer that you could move, just an idea, do what you want to do, but a hybrid could be that if the board was inclined, they might follow having trustee Wazinski, because one of the main issues that came up, especially with both former supervisors, was a lot of meetings that, for a variety of reasons, which I won't get into tonight, could not attend a lot of meetings. Both supervisors. And so the supervisor pro tem was really the person who attended meetings in the stead of the supervisor. So the position was much more directed to someone who would attend the meetings. It was I can't go to that meeting, the supervisor pro tem would go. And that was much more prevalent than ever over administering meetings or presiding over meetings. So one thing you could do tonight is, if you wanted to, is consider trustee Wazinski as supervisor pro tem for that purpose, and that purpose that both supervisors have had in place, and that is for attending meetings that she cannot attend. And then leave it to, you're not making any decisions following the board rules about presiding over meetings. And if we do have a situation in 2023 where Supervisor Jackson cannot attend a meeting, the clerk would call the order to that meeting in 2023, and you decide at that meeting who's going to preside over, and you can make that decision. But you'd still have a supervisor pro tem, but it would be for the function. Sorry for the long story, but this has been done a lot of different ways, and it's kind of how the board wants to go about it. But I do know 95% of the time in the last 3 years, it was more about meeting attendance and not presiding over meetings. So I hope that helps.
I think that a little more clarity is required, and that attending meetings refers to meetings outside of the board meeting. And then using the process in the rules specifically for board meetings when this supervisor is not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have clarified. Attending meetings, all external, not the board meetings. I should have clarified that.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
Is that the entire scope of the authority? Is there any other action that a supervisor pro tem can take other than
Attending a meeting?
attending, well, I don't even read that in the rules, but chairing a board meeting?
As far as I know, that's the only,
To my, only been here 10 years, but for my decade of service here, the supervisor pro tem has only had two functions, depending on who the supervisor was and the board members: presiding over meetings and attended meetings in the stead of the supervisor, external meetings, when the supervisor could not attend. That's all. There's been no other function of a supervisor pro tem, to my knowledge.
does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Trustee, Clerk Guthrie.
So this motion before us is to appoint trustee Wazinski to act as supervisor pro tem at any meeting of the township board where the supervisor is absent. That's the motion before us.
No,
That's what it reads,
that's what it reads, right?
right? Correct? That's what this motion reads. It does not say any other meetings. It just says this township board meeting.
Right,
That's the only motion before us.
right. And we can change that motion based on the clarification we've been given by the manager relative to outside meetings that the supervisor would be expected to attend. We can add that clause
Right.
to reflect the clarification we've gotten from Mr.
So we will
Walsh.
amend the motion then. I'm asking before I ask to amend it, right? Amend it so that it reads that this motion to appoint a supervisor pro tem is to cover external meetings that a supervisor would normally attend, full stop, which would keep us in compliance with our board rules where we would appoint a supervisor pro tem to chair the meeting in the chair's absence at the meeting.
If that's your preference.
A board meeting.
That would keep
You
us
have
in
a right.
compliance with our rules. To be clear,
You have
I
a
think
right
these
to
rules,
make that.
I think these rules need to be updated.
Yes.
To make that more
It
clear.
has become very obvious.
Right, well, they're
Yeah.
20 years old.
Yes.
So it's definitely, I think, a project we're taking on at some point.
He's in the bad chair.
The chair.
He's the bad chair.
I'm having a rough day today. I've got the wrong.
None of us are
wrong
pranking
chair.
you, it's just happening.
This is the hazing I was promised.
Yes.
So then I think for the sake of remaining in compliance, I would move to amend this motion to read that the board appoint through December 31, 2023, trustee Courtney Wazinski to act as supervisor pro tem at any external meeting wherein the supervisor is absent.
Okay,
So that would be my official motion to amend.
which then puts us back in compliance with, at each meeting, the clerk will lead the selection of the supervisor. pro tem.
Yes.
Yes. That's the way, and then we follow our board rules.
So that motion to amend would need a support then, I believe, in order to be a valid motion yet, but
So you are making that motion
to amend
to amend.
your motion that we are.
Did I make that motion?
You did.
Okay.
I defer to our parliamentarian, but
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
Could you reread the
absolutely.
motion that is on, that you want to put on the table?
So I move to amend Supervisor Jackson's motion, which would newly read that the board appoint through December 31, 2023, trustee Courtney Wazinski to act as supervisor pro tem at any external meeting wherein the supervisor is absent.
You need a support, and then we can discuss.
I don't have
I
support.
support the motion.
Oh, Mr. DeShane, okay. Would you have further comments?
I think I've said everything
Clarification?
that I mean to say in the discussion of this topic. This keeps us in compliance. It gives the supervisor the backup that you were looking for, I think.
Okay.
And allows us to act within our rules.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you. So, any external meeting? So who's doing the township board meeting? If only the supervisor pro tem is doing the external meetings, who's doing the township board meetings? I don't like the word external.
Hang
It's
on.
confusing.
Mr. DeShane.
Well, according to our board rules, the board will appoint a supervisor pro tem in the absence of the supervisor at the start of each board meeting. That's what our rules require us to do.
Correct.
So
Okay.
in fact, what we've done in the past has been outside, of this board at least, been outside of our rules.
Okay, I'm missing that component in this motion. So basically, this motion is, and it's only in the absence, I get it now. Okay.
Right. So mine would amend the motion to read what I said.
So to reiterate what you stated, Treasurer DeShane, at each meeting, if there's not someone at the beginning, as Manager Walsh explained, how we've been doing it for a decade or so. There's not someone appointed at the beginning of the year, so we know, and then it's at each meeting, somebody is going to be appointed.
which is what our board rules require.
Okay,
And
Okay.
so we, otherwise, we're going to have to stop this whole process, amend the board rules, then come back and do what we've done in the past.
correct, okay.
And this is the way to proceed, have trustee Wazinski as a supervisor pro tem at all external meetings, and then on a meeting-by-meeting basis, appoint one. Although with the supervisor's perfect attendance, we're not likely to have to do that. If the past year is any history already precedent for the future.
I assume we're going to be that lucky.
Yes, I hope we
We're
are.
going to be that lucky. Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, just one thing that, so you have all the information in front of you. Back when then trustee Jackson was appointed as supervisor pro tem, and trustee Obsimer was appointed supervisor pro tem, which was under the supervisor Stika era. The board did, even though they were appointed for the year, they did follow their, just so you know, I'm not trying to change trajectory at all here. The board did, before those meetings, if I recall correctly, which I think I do, they did have the clerk open the meeting, and they did go through the process of making that appointment even before those meetings. So although they had someone lined up for the year, that's the way the supervisor wanted it, because it was more meeting-based for Supervisor Stika. They did follow the rule when it came time to making the appointment. I don't want you to think they just carte blanche appoint somebody. They didn't do it that way. It was a real
done every meeting.
hybrid approach the last 3 years as to how it was done under Supervisor Stika. So that's all the information I have for you about it.
Okay. So what we have before us is an amendment to the motion that I read, which inserts the proviso that we're talking about, primarily about external meetings, with the assumption, and maybe we should state the assumption, that at individual board meetings, we will follow board
rules.
rule, and that might be an addition to your amendment that would help clarify the process for everybody else.
Yes, so I from an intent perspective, yes, that's exactly what I intend. And if we can find a way to write that in the minutes so that it's a friendly amendment that I accept to my motion, that's fine. And I'll let the playback of the tape and the schoolmaster work that out. But I accept that as the intent of my motion, that we follow our board procedures for the chairing of the meetings. And this amendment to the motion is regarding external meetings.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie.
If the supervisor could entertain letting us know, because when I read this motion in the packet, it was only for this township board meeting.
Right.
I would like to know what those external meetings are that you do attend, so that I know what. I love Courtney, fantastic trustee, you know that, but I would like to know what I'm voting for instead of some sort of carte blanche. I don't know what all of the meeting, I mean, you don't have to say all of them, I know there are a ton.
The
but if you-
meetings that I attend as supervisor.
Yeah, if you could let us know what that is, I would love to know what those meetings are before I vote on this.
Let's see if I can remember. So there is the Lansing, the Meridian, East Lansing chamber meeting that I attend as supervisor. I think there is something I haven't attended, Capitol.
CapCog or?
Yeah, CapCon.
But this is more, 98% of these meetings we're talking about are not regularly scheduled meetings. There's something that comes up where we get called and can the supervisor happens to be out of town and we get called and we're asked to attend a meeting and I'm supposed to bring the supervisor and she's not around, it would be a meeting with Delta Township about some issue. That's when this would come into play. Who represents the supervisor at these sort of meetings that come up? That's what we're talking about.
Okay, it's not necessarily supervising a meeting, it's
No.
being a representative.
That's right.
At the meeting.
Right.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's, okay.
That,
I'm just, I guess I have one final question. Do we have a definition of the duties of supervisor pro tem in our policies? Is that part of what you were reading or what's on your screen there?
If I may.
please.
So the only thing that it appears as though our rules require is that the supervisor pro tem chair the township board meeting in the absence of the supervisor, once they are appointed at the meeting. Beyond that, it's a definition that we're making up.
So there's no rule that the supervisor pro tem attends external meetings?
Not beyond what we're about to do.
Okay,
Satisfied?
yes.
Okay. So are we all clear on what the question is before us at this point? What the motion is at this point? Then I will not try to repeat it. But I do need to know that everyone is clear on what our intent is. All right.
We might ask Mr. Henderson to repeat it one more time for the people in the back.
Mr. Hendricks.
Okay. So I am moving to amend Supervisor Jackson's motion to appoint through December 31, 2023, trustee Courtney Wazinski to act as supervisor pro tem at any external meeting of the township board wherein the supervisor is absent, and that we will follow board rules for the appointment of a supervisor pro tem for the conduct of township board meetings.
I think that's about as clear as we can make it. That's clear? Okay, are we ready to vote on the amended motion? All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 The chair votes yes, opposed, no. Then the motion passes. Thank you.
So that was the amendment. We do have to pass now the motion.
Original motion.
That amended your motion to read what I said. Now we have to actually pass it.
All right. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Opposed, the chair votes yes. All opposed to the motion, please say no. The motion passes. We are clear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We will move on now to item E, Township Auditing Services. And Mr. Walsh, our manager, will introduce this.
Thank you. So we have a 5-year agreement with Yo and Yo Accounting to provide our township audit. And they've done that in 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 21. It's time for the 22 audit. Our contract expired last week with them, December 31 of 22. Before we were with Yo and Yo in 2017, when I arrived in 2013, we were with AHP, a local auditing firm down on Okemos Road by the library. The question before you tonight is, when we look at our auditing services, there's really 3 options. One is for the board to direct us, Director Garber and me, to do a RFP and come back with bids for auditor in early February. The second option for you is to consider, and I can't think of any other options, would be the 1-year audit number. We're currently paying approximately $45,000 for our audit, and Yo has submitted a bid of $47,250 if you go with a 1-year price. You can disregard the single audit number because we're not sure we would even need a single audit. If you want to do a 3-year contract with Yo and Yo, they've provided the numbers anywhere from $46,350 to $49,175. So RFP process with bids due in about 3 to 4 weeks if we can get back before February, accept the 1-year agreement with Yo, so they would do the 2022 audit, or a 3-year agreement to do the 2022, 2023, and 2024 audit. And those are the options before you this evening, and we seek your direction.
All right, Mr. DeShane.
Manager Walsh, one of the ways we praised you during your evaluation was your financial acumen. So you've read a lot of audits, you work with a lot of auditors. What is your opinion of the services we receive from Yo compared to other auditing firms you work with?
My preference is always to stay local and spend the money in town. It's number one for me. It always has been, always will be. I can tell you that Yo's services have been outstanding. We deal with Allie Barnes. She's out of Alma. The office, actually, you know Dante Ianni? Okay, Dante was our former planning commission chair. Dante just was hired in the last 2 or 3 weeks by Yo. Their services have been outstanding. And as you know, I don't have to tell you, you are well aware, and I know Trustee Wilson is well aware because you sat in on some meetings, and I believe the supervisor did as well. We went through some very difficult times back in April and May with our auditing, when our finance director left, and we had a lot of work in front of us. And Director Garber deserves credit for that too, but Yo was outstanding in helping us move forward. So their service component, Mr. Treasurer, has been outstanding. Their price points, I have made some calls to other communities to see the cost. Their costs are not online at all. In fact, it's a pretty favorable price. Again, I'm really torn on to respond to you because I prefer to do work local, and in this case, their service has been good and their price is really good. So that's my experience. I can tell you that in my former community, which has to go back a long ways now, right? We were paying, and it's a community of 10,000. We were paying in the 40s 20 years ago. And
Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Do you have a preference as to a 1-year contract versus a 3-year contract to lock the price?
it's a good question. Probably, although it would create more work for us in the RFP process, I probably would recommend a 1 year, and that'll give the board, if you're going to go that route, that'll give the board some time to deliberate this year about this and about whether you want to do an RFP in 2023 going forward.
Thank you.
Trustee Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. My preference, I think, would be to approve a 1-year agreement, and rather than come back after, rather than deliberate further, I think we could just authorize the manager to go forward with an RFP for future years for a period that they can set, whatever the time period should be. That will preclude them from having to come back and ask us again about this same issue at a future meeting. I think for the sake of timeliness and efficiency, trying to squeeze an RFP in before audit season gets into full gear would make things very tight. And Yo are obviously familiar with our finances and have done a good job, as the manager pointed out. For 3 years, 2 of the 3 years are at above the price that, they're an increment higher, but I don't know if that's market rate or not. I think an RFP will tell us that. I think if we can lock in the price for 1 year now and then go competitive bid for the next several years, I think that's probably the most prudent thing to do, in my opinion.
All right. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I would concur, and I would also approve the motion to appoint Yo for 1 year because they did a sterling job of helping us with the transition between 2 different financial managers, one of whom did not perform as well as we would have expected during the time of the audit beginning. So in that spirit, I would like to offer a motion.
Okay.
And I am going to select motion number 2 of the 3 that are before us. Move to approve a 1-year auditing services agreement with Yo and Yo in the amount of $47,250 and authorize the township manager to sign the attached contract.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. Further comments, Ms. Wilson?
Just what we have spoken about already. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments?
I too am very comfortable with Yo and Yo, and I would not be opposed to even a 3-year contract based on the services we received from them and the minor bumps from year to year. Nonetheless, I will concur with trustees Wilson and Hendrickson. The prudent thing would be at this point to put out an RFP. So I support the 1 year, and we'll allow staff in the off-season, after the audit's completed, to put an RFP out for 2024.
So that sounds to me like you're actually amending.
Well, I'm not. I'm concurring that we should option 2 for a 1-year agreement.
Okay. With no additional comments.
No additional
about the
changes to
RFP. Okay. Other comments? Trustee Wazinski?
I'll just support for the same reasons as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So this is a motion that requires a roll call vote. Mr. Lemaster?
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you all. Item 12F on our agenda has to do with the Senior Center Community Center Task Force, and that discussion will be led by Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'll be very brief. I know the board has discussed now for 4 or 5 months the potential of looking at what do we do with our existing senior center that's located in the very south end of the community in an old classroom in Chippewa School, and looking forward, how can we do a lot better? How can we become a prime Meridian senior community center? We've actually taken a look at the one in Portage over by Kalamazoo. There's a lot we could do. So I'm asking you just to take the first step tonight and create a task force with a charge of coming back in approximately a year with a recommendation on how to move forward. And that would include possible location, possible funding, and all those things. The memo before you this evening includes recommended committee members of Supervisor Jackson, Treasurer DeShane, and Trustee Wilson, myself, and Director Schmidt, Director Maisner, and of course, Director Sherry Wisdom, who manages the senior center. That's our recommend. The task force right now, the idea is to keep it rather small, deal with just the technical issues. This is not, I want to be very clear, this is not about the design, this is simply to put together the nuts and bolts, primarily location and funding. If the board decides to move forward in December, then there'd be a creation of a much larger task force, which would involve seniors and much more community members as we looked at the design and all of that. So I didn't want you to think that this is going to go from start to finish with just a very small task force. Thank you.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie.
I'd like to make the motion.
Welcome to.
I'd like to move to create a Meridian Township Senior Center Community Center Task Force to consist of Township Supervisor Jackson, Treasurer DeShane, Trustee Wilson, Manager Walsh, Director Schmidt, Director Maisner, and Director Wisdom. The task force is hereby requested to return with their recommendations by December 1st, 2023.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wazinski. Clerk Guthrie.
I'll keep my comments brief. We've discussed this at several meetings. The board is unified in their recommendation for moving forward with looking into this. I think we all agree that, correct me if I'm wrong, that our seniors deserve better. and that we need a community center. And so I think this is long overdue, and I'm looking forward to the work of our task force and seeing what the results are. And I thank everyone for being on this task force.
Okay. Trustee Wazinski.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this to us and being, forethought in this planning. I do think it's really important. We have a senior center and it's been well received, but to add a community center and improved senior center will be, well used here in Meridian, and another destination like our marketplace for people to congregate and amongst each other.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. DeShane.
With the ARPA funding that this board has given towards the idea of assessing the feasibility of this task force will have the ability to hire consultants or others to help with this process. Is that your understanding as well?
It is, and I've already had a conversation with a local resident who is an engineer who knows quite a bit of people in that realm. And the answer to your question is definitely yes. We will need expertise.
Thank you.
I would note also that this is maybe the third step in our commitment to this project. We made a commitment in our 2023 goals, and we also, I believe, in our budget, made a commitment to start this process. Yes. And so this is the implementation of that plan at this point. The plan for implementing the project. Any further comments? Then we need a voice vote in this instance. The motion is to create a task force consisting of the named personalities and a request to return with their recommendations by December 1, 2023. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Opposed to the motion? The vote is unanimous, and we have our task force, and it is charged. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, thank you. Not on the agenda, but before I sit down, Mr. Scales is a former trustee and former planning commissioner, and I just want to take a moment and he had a tremendous loss today with the death of his brother Jeffrey, and I just wanted to acknowledge that to Mr. Scales and to the public. So, thank you.
Thank you. As we move to item 13, we have 3 items for board discussion. 13A is Township Emergency Plan Update, which will be, discussion will be led by Chief Hamill.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Supervisor Board. In 2020, we rewrote the plan designating Ingham County Emergency Management Homeland Security as our emergency management agency, as well as we based the document on Public Act 204, which helps us in regards to any type of money or support from the state that could come during an emergency. As part of the plan, we have to update it annually, and what you see in front of you, really the updates are the supervisor change, promulgation document with her signature, and then a lot of other name changes in regards to new department heads over the past year, as well as some rank changes, retirements, so people moved into some succession areas for different departments. So that's really the update for today, and I look forward to you voting on this in the next board meeting if you approve, and I'm open for questions.
Okay. Board, the floor is open for questions of Chief Hamill about the Township Emergency Plan update. I would note that the changes are relatively minor kinds of changes that have to be made in a timely way. Nothing major. You have questions, comments? Trustee Wilson.
Chief Hamel, have you taken into consideration changes in technology in this plan?
That's a great question. No,
Okay.
but we probably should. And I think it's the next presentation I'm going to bring you is the continuity of operations plan. I think that may lead to it in the long run as we move forward to looking at putting more documentation electronically instead of with paper that would support emergencies or if we were to lose a building for some reason, things like that. So great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Then thank you, Chief Hamel. I believe, oh, I'm sorry. Item 13B is an amendment to the resolution establishing the Corridor Improvement Authority. And Neighborhood and Economic Director Amber Clark will lead that discussion.
Good evening. I thought I was all hip bringing my tablet here and I'm not even on the right section of the agenda. But, okay. Tonight, discussion from the board in November. The township staff came in front of the board to talk about the goals, but also to give kind of a review of the things we've been going through and preparing to present to the township board. Our CIA is a body technically of 9. I have 5 strong attendees, one of which is Supervisor Jackson. So it makes it a little bit difficult to have and hold quorum to have meetings to make sure that we are holding out the mission of the CIA. The board in 2016, the township board in 2016, established the CIA, I think, as a mechanism to have a voice during the conversation of the BRT. The BRT conversation has dwindled, but when you talk to City of Lansing and East Lansing, you can still see that they have development goals and priorities for infill concentrated development along Grand River. So even though the conversation regionally has dwindled a little bit about how we advance the Grand River Michigan Avenue corridor, it still seems to be a priority decision amongst the municipalities and across the region. So our stick, we run into an issue when we're trying to get business owners and property owners on Grand River to show up to the meetings when they don't feel like they have any wherewithal to get anything done. Included in our packet tonight is the reply letter from MDOT, which was the joint letter sent between the Transportation Commission and CIA. And their requests were well received from MDOT, but you can see the response, many of the things that both authorities would like. MDOT is asking that the township help to fund those things. Street lighting is not something that they do. It's not their type of street lighting. So if that was something we'd want to do, and then, we've done a street lighting campaign before, so I would say that we should take a look at how well that went first before pursuing that. But in either case, there's no real improvements and enhancements the township CIA can implement without any funding. So it's a pretty big question, and I know it sounds kind of dramatic to say, would the board be willing to amend or even allow for the amendment of the resolution so that the CIA can pursue that discussion of a TIF and determine how relatively feasible it is? The plans from CIA discussion and from recommended staff discussion is that we focus on concentrated development along Grand River. We know that the mall needs redevelopment. We know that much of that is going to be infrastructure improvement, drain improvement specifically. And we know that a commercial mall does not have a funding for, a 60-year drain improvement project. We know the Drain Commission is specifically looking to do adequate updates along both the Okemos and Grettenberger drains, which fall right into that area. There's a lot that we'll be able to do if there is a funding bucket to support or match, and there's really nothing we can do without it. We were successful at getting the 3 pedestrian crossings put in, but really, the commissions, they've said it, I don't want to just sit here and write letters to different groups to ask them to grant us permission to do things. We would like the CIA members would like to be able to take charge of that themselves. I think it also sets a brand for the CIA so that the members can feel like they're taking charge. We're asking the owner of Mattress Source and the owner of Playmakers and the owners of Kelly, we were asking these direct small business owners to give up their time, to give us the suggestions about what development they need in order to elevate the whole region. And it's hard for them when they feel like they're not getting anything done. So that is the request in front of you tonight, and open to questions.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. And thank you, Director Clark, for bringing this forward to us as quickly as you did. This was something that I felt strongly about when we did our goal setting back in November. As a former liaison to the Corridor Improvement Authority, I can absolutely concur with Director Clark's comments. These are members of the community, business owners in, I think, all cases, or at least representatives of the business community in the corridor, who are excited about seeing improvements to their part of the township. While this Corridor Improvement Authority may have been created for a slightly different purpose with the BRT at its inception, now it is functionally without real ability to pursue its purpose, which is to improve our largest corridor in the township. I think it is well past time that we take this up and that we allow them to find a source of funding so that they can start to move on some of these goals that I think are for the betterment of everyone in the township in making these improvements to the functional heart of Meridian Township. So I am fully in support of making this change to allow them to pursue a funding source so that they can start to work on some of these priorities that they've had building up for a long time.
Okay. Mr. Shane?
Thank you. I too support this idea of allowing them the freedom to at least recommend a funding mechanism, likely through a TIF, to the board. Without money, they're not going to be able to do anything. And essentially, the corridor is our downtown, and the mall is our economic driver, has been for 50 years since it was built and remains that today. And the mall certainly needs redevelopment. I do have a question for you about the map. The map seems to include Meyer in the corridor improvement area.
You're correct.
And the Meyer is also included in the DDA. Is that the only overlap amongst the two areas?
That is the only overlap amongst the two. The map is boundary only, right, since we're not collecting any tax. If a TIF were to be put into place for the CIA, we would not be able to capture off of Meyer. It would not be my suggestion either. I did not want to get too far into this, what would be the recommendation of the TIF, because I'm speaking out of a lot of conjecture. But I would hope we would stay away from commercial properties that have a propensity for a tax appeal, because then that would drop down our capture. So I would try to stay away from our Meyers and our Target Krogers, just to make sure that our capture is sticking within the boundary. But we wouldn't be able to capture off of Meyer anyway.
Well, that would mean removing the whole Newman Road corridor effectively, because we've got Home Depot is likely to appeal. We've got Kohl's who's likely to appeal. We've got Kroger's who's likely to appeal. That whole big box corridor there. They're all experts at going to the State Tax Commission and arguing that their property is worthless if they're not there.
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to avoid any situations that happened in the DDA, learning our lessons. The map boundary provides that an entity within the map boundary could come to the CAA for a request for TIF. The TIF boundary would specify these are the parcels of which we're capturing. They don't have to be equal.
Okay.
Trustee Wilson.
So absent the big boxes that are in this community within this corridor, is it executable that we could do?
There's a rough draft on my desk.
Okay.
$12 million capture excluding Kroger, Meijer, Target. For the commercial properties, is $13 million.
Okay.
And that's not counting the new development that we know is coming, the Trader Joe's, the Consumers Credit Union, and any further development along Great River.
So do you believe it could be done that way?
I believe it can be done that way.
Okay.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. So I'm curious, is it standard practice to have the boundary map of those that could request TIF dollars include those that are unwilling to be included in the TIF?
It seems to happen among communities. The new Red Cedar developments along Michigan Avenue that are very close to MSU's campus are part of Lansing's downtown. So the district maps and the boundaries and how, it's the reason why you pay an economic development director is to be able to read through the acts and know how you can layer incentives to make it work.
No, I understand. I guess my question is, why on earth would we allow them to reap the benefits of something that they're not willing to pay?
More than likely no, more than likely not, right? I would not make that recommendation,
Right.
but by law, they are within the boundary they could.
I see.
Right, so Meijer could approach the CIA and say, we would like to put whatever in, and the CIA would review that, but then of course they could say no.
Right. Okay.
So, Director Clark, my understanding is what we need at this point is an adjustment in the charter for the CIA. Because in the CIA, I learned recently that there is essentially a prohibition to the use of a TIF in the operation of this organization.
Correct. The township board added a line item after the last resolve on the resolution.
And essentially what you're telling us is we can reverse that with a formal amendment to that description.
Correct.
And that at this point, that is what you want us to do.
Correct. I can't really have a conversation with the CIA about TIF or come up with a proposal because it says we shall not pursue it at all. So I can't do anything.
Okay. Is it possible for you to bring that request to us formally
At the next meeting?
at the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Then I would certainly like to see that at the next meeting. And by the nodding of heads, I will assume that the rest of our board would like to see that.
I will bring it back and possibly put it under action with the amendment included.
Okay, Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. Quick question, Director Clark. Do you have any inclination of why this was added to this particular resolution? What was the purpose of excluding TIFs altogether?
I was only a resident at this time, but I believe I believe it was that the board, the then Meridian Township Board, would not have agreed to a TIF, that there may have been one or two members that may not have agreed to a TIF. I think also at the time, we were considering going after our DDA TIF revamp to 2018. So now that's two TIFs in the same area that we're going to the same jurisdictions. I think strategically, this was the choice for the board.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Mr. Walsh, would you like to speak to that question?
Just real quickly, we had struggled to get the CEI approved. The former, I'll just be very candid with you, the former clerk at that time was very opposed to TIFs. And so the board as a whole, strong majority of the board wanted to do a TIF, but just decided to opt out from trying to do that just to get the CEI approved.
Anyone else have questions? So I believe we would ask you to present us with a proposal for amending the charter for the CIA at our next meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13C is continuity of operations plan, and I believe that's Chief Hamill as well.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to start just kind of, this has been a 2-year process for me, and the reason I took so long is I wanted to make sure that this plan actually reflected Meridian Township. This is my 3rd plan I've done in my career. Started with Lansing. It wasn't based on this type of concept. And then when I went to the Board of Water and Light, we adopted the federal plan, and we changed it because, the federal plans are like this, and we only need to be like this. And so the plan at the board really is similar to this, and I adopted that and took it and revamped it to work for Meridian. But to start the process, I want to actually read the promulgation statement that Madam Jackson, Supervisor Jackson actually put together, and it talks about what is the continuity operation. So Meridian Township's mission is providing a safe and welcome, sustainable prime community. To establish this mission, Meridian Township must ensure its operations are performed efficiently with minimal disruption, especially during an emergency. This document provides planning and program guidance for implementing the township continuity plan to ensure the organization conduct its essential functions under all threats and conditions. So we don't know what threats are coming. We know that and when I get into the presentation here, we'll go over some types of emergencies that we could have, but the most common emergency you're going to see in any community in Michigan today is weather. Now, we know in history, we've seen others. We've had the ice storm. That was a big one. We've had flooding here in the township. Board of Water and Light had a cyber attack. That was millions and millions and millions. I can tell you it was at least 30 million. I had the opportunity to help them with that prior to working there. So the threats are real. They're out there. And so we have threats that we know are coming. We knew the ice storm was coming in 2013. We prepared for it the best we could. We didn't know how it was going to hit. Imagine what you would do today if we had 6 feet of snow overnight like Buffalo did a few weeks ago. How do we operate? We aren't even getting to work. So who's in charge? The cell phones are down. Frank can't tell us what to do. What do we do? So these are all things that we can try to plan for, but every situation is going to be different. So I'm gonna go through this and kind of talk through it, and we'll end with questions. So a continuity operations plan is designed for normal, when we are not in a normal operating mode. So what are we going to do when something happens that we lose the ability to maintain our critical function of a township? We did this during COVID, right? We closed our doors for how many weeks? 3, 4, 5. Employees stayed home, citizens couldn't come in. So then we reopened on a low scale. Some people were still working. Some people were working from home. And so we've kind of already lived through a continuity operation plan. We just have to put it in paper. We've actually been through it to look at what worked, what didn't work, and it was trial and error, but we did a good job. A lot of good leadership that led us through putting buildings outside for social distancing, putting barriers up. So as we move through this, those are the kind of things that we're looking at. The mission essential functions are based on our departments. And so what does each department do, and how do we maintain that mission essential function? And when one department's down, doesn't mean the other departments are down. So we all work together. So it will assign roles by implementation team. And those are generally assigned to like a management team, so probably M team, but potentially some of you involved, and it will be led by the manager. And then we have what we call continuity personnel, which are the departments that are affected, and they have to actually work through their issues and how we maintain. And so that will help lead us into how we operate. So again, the purpose is to provide, or is to guide to maintain mission essential functions. How do we maintain our continuity of government? Because without continuity of government, our township is on its own, right? So we will identify the different areas and continue to move through that with planning. And again, this document is just the start. I'll be meeting with every department, going through an annex and support plans to build out what their needs would be during minor emergencies or major emergencies. So we cannot predict, I'm going to read this part because this is important. We cannot predict the severity and consequences of an emergency. Effective COOP planning can minimize the impact on Meridian Township and allow for continued essential service to the community. Very, very important. We look at it as the all-hazard approach. Again, we know, and you can look at the list at the bottom there, there's a lot of things that could happen. We've lived through some of them already, as I stated. Before I was here, since I've been here, in the community in different areas. And so this plan is going to help us build to be somewhat prepared of the unpredictable. So the planning assumptions that we have to look at when we're doing this is most likely some type of emergency is going to disrupt us in some way, shape, or form. The fire disrupted us in a small way 3 weeks ago because we all hands on deck doing other things. Ice storms, snowstorms, flooding. So it's somewhat unpredictable, but it affects the operation. It may require some type of evacuation of a building. It may require us to have people stay home. So as we move through this, we have to look at our mission essential function, our different responsible areas, HR, building maintenance, things like that, and build a plan to support them during an emergency. The intent as we build this plan, the intent will be to be operational for whatever emergency within 12 hours. Now, that depends on how bad. We get a fire in the building here, may not work, but we have to be up and running somewhere, so where are we relocating people? Do we have enough space to move people to different areas? So these are all part of the planning process. And again, not all employees may be affected with this, and they might have support roles that help with whatever else we're dealing with within the township. So the objectives, number one is always life safety. Our own people, the township. So we have to take that in consideration. So no matter what the emergency is or whatever happened within the township of our buildings or our people, we have to look at that first. Secondly is property loss. The third part is mission essential functions. We have to be able to have continuity of government. We have to be able to operate. So as we move through this, those are considerations that we have to build on. The intent is a timely recovery, so that 12-hour rule. But we know recovery can last for months. We're still recovering from COVID to a small degree across the country and across the world. And that's affected a lot of different areas of how we operate. We plan through what we call the 4 phases of emergency management. The readiness phase is building this plan. So like I mentioned earlier, every department within the township will have a functional annex. Within that, we also have a support plan, which could be IT, could be building maintenance, could be HR. And those things will all be built in. So that's in your readiness and preparedness. As well in that, we will actually exercise this and we'll evaluate it to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do, or we'll tweak it. The second phase is when we actually have an incident. So we have to determine what occurred, were we able to pre-plan that. Like the ice storm, we pre-planned, but we didn't know the effect until it hit. So we do have ability to plan a little bit. Last week or 2 weeks ago over Christmas, we knew we were going to get snow. Didn't know it was going to last 4 days, but we knew we were going to get snow. How can we pre-plan for that and be ready? And then we activate the continuity operation plan, which gives you your sustained actions. It kind of gives us a plan to build. And then we kind of have all the workers go out and start doing what needs to be done. And you could actually look at that like we did the fire a few weeks ago, where we had the initial incident. Fire department, police responded, everything did what it did. And then behind the scenes, look what happened. We had donations. DTN took care of the people, found them a place to live temporarily. We collected money for them, luggage, things like that. So those are really those sustained actions, and now they're in the recovery phase. So that's what we're going to do in the township, something similar to that. There's a couple things I want to say. And then basically, as we built this, we built what we call a flow chart here. And really, it starts, the green is the incident, and then depending on the incident, where we go in the phases. It may be something minor, we get to phase 2, and then we move right into recovery. Something major, then we go through the whole process to get to the recovery. So these are the areas right now that have designated that will end up needing a functional annex. And some of them will be combined, but some of them will be separate because we have to look at really the whole infrastructure. What software do they use? What hardware do they use? How do they operate? What are their needs if we have to relocate? If we have to get critical documentation, where do we get it? Where can we find it if it's not accessible? The plan is based on 3 documents. The main plan, which again, this plan is built based on federal guidelines from FEMA. And then from there, we have the specific functional annex for each department, and then any support plans that would go with it, like I mentioned, with HR, IT, and so on and so forth. And then the functional annex, it lists who's a part of that department. It has a succession plan. And then from there, we build on the 4 phases again on how we would mitigate if we did have a situation. Again, it's not foolproof because we don't always know what's going to happen. We can guarantee weather to a lot of degrees, but not other things. From there, we look at all the appendix that go with the functional annex, and there's 14 of them, and we build the plan out from there. So we have a checklist in the beginning, and I'll show you that momentarily. What is their mission essential function, and how do they maintain that? How do we build it back if we do have an incident that they can't come to work, they lose their offices, things like that. Then we have the orders of succession, potentially look at alternate facilities that they could work out of, what their needs would be. If it's where, let's say, Okemos Road floods, we had the construction down here, the bridge is out, how are we getting to work? So those things get built into the plan as we move on alternate routes and things like that if we have to. How do we communicate? So one of the things that we can actually do in the long run is take Everbridge, we've talked about that in the past, and we use it internal for certain things. We can build that out in our departments to notify specific departments, or every employee of the township where Manager Walsh says everybody stays home today, it's not safe to come to work. So we have that mass notification system that can help with communication. And then use the flow chart, and then what we do is create go kits, and go kits would be, if I had to move out of my office, what am I taking with me? One of the things that's recommended also with this is have a plan with your family. If you come to work and you can't go home, what's your family going to do without you? Is the planning at home able for your wife, your children to sustain, or vice versa? So think about a sustainment plan at home also. This is in the functional annex. Again, this is the checklist, and I kind of already talked about it. I'm not going to go through a lot, but this will help guide a department through an incident if they have one. Again, another flow chart for if we do activate COOP, the functional annex, and again, it starts with the incident, the pre-planning the incident, and work through it as needed. And then the support plan, as I stated, could be buildings, building maintenance, records management, personnel issues with HR or things we need to document, IT, And of course, safety and logistics is important because someone's going to have to make decisions and we're going to have to make sure people are safe. So the next step as we move forward is actually, once you approve this, is we'd be meeting with all the different departments and building their plan. And then at some point in the future down the road, we would exercise it or exercise individual departments and kind of work through some minor things to see how it works. That is the nuts and bolts, so I will, questions if you have them. It's a lot to absorb, I know, but I'm open for questions.
Board members, Trustee Wilson.
The one thing, I actually did a plan like this a few years ago for my company, and the one thing I'm not seeing in here are procedures. Usually stored digitally in the cloud. Is that an essential component about how to operate when you don't have access to the materials?
So those would have to be developed within departments, so procedures on accessing documentation. So like damage assessment is considered a procedure. It's an annex that we use for our individuals to go out during a weather emergency or a damage to buildings, flooding, tornadoes, and document that. So same thing with departments if we have to, there's different names for them. There's emergency support functions or department plans on how they would activate and do what they need to do to get through the situation. I know that's kind of, that probably doesn't.
No, it's the ramp up.
Yeah.
It's the ramp up to
It
get
is.
back to normal functioning, but they're essential functions probably for every department.
Exactly.
It should be documented. How do you go about restarting?
Exactly.
Especially
And
if
the
you're
management
outside.
team will have a big say in that. Again, we go back to COVID, we were shut down, we opened slowly. And, for a year, we weren't normal. We didn't function as a government normally, and we learned from it, and we adapted and things went well. But we supported our community the best we could.
So, Chief Hamel, as I understand it, what you have talked about and presented to us at this point is the framework for a specific plan for Meridian Township. And you're asking the board to approve that framework, and afterwards you flesh out the specifics for different people, different offices, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
Okay. Other questions by the board? Mr. Duchesne.
Thank you. Do you have an approximate timeline for how much time you think it's going to take and before we'll have a co-op plan with annexes completed?
It would be nice to have it done by the end of the year.
So that is your goal?
It's a big process.
Yes, I believe it's a very big process.
It'll take multiple meetings with each department to build it. So it's gonna be some time consuming. I'd like to believe we're gonna have a good chunk of it done by the end of the year.
Okay.
Once it's approved, we can move forward.
And as you mentioned, COVID gave us a rehearsal for this. And I would argue that we got to resume 90% of township operations much quicker than a year.
For sure, for sure. I mean, the critical time was early on, what are we going to do? And then it was, we're closing. We weren't prepared for that. Nobody was. So, but we adapted. And once we came back, we did have a rehearsal where we had buildings outside where people would come and pay their bills, not have to come in here. So we had the social distancing. We somewhat rearranged, I believe, your office area. So we had more social distancing. And then at some point, slowly months later, we started allowing more and more people into the buildings and employees to come back. And then we closed it kind of a little bit again later on in the year when it came up again. Mm-hmm. And there's, it was really a good trial basis on what we can do and what we can accomplish here. I think we were very successful with what we had to deal with.
When you bring this back to us for approval, would it be possible to include some approximate timetable milestones that you hope to achieve?
Sure.
Thank you.
Craig Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I would only ask that a copy of this presentation be given to Mr. Lemaster in the morning, if you could, because it was hard to, the charts were blurry, and I couldn't read the charts in the packet.
Okay.
Because that part was blurry. So if that could be added as an addendum to the board packet, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Let me ask a couple of context questions. The first is, a part of the purpose here is, first of all, we do not have a plan like this in place before. The second is that this plan has responsibilities for how the township relates to the county and the state and the federal government and their emergency management protocols.
Yes and no. So this is a separate document that this won't go to Ingham County, it won't go to the state, it's our own personal document. The emergency support plan does. But in a large-scale emergency, let's say a tornado, we would rely on Ingham County to help us with this, and even the state. So that's when that would fold into some type of emergency where we would need additional support. We've exhausted all our resources for police and fire, and we would ask for additional resources. If there's potentially money there from the disaster, that would go through the county.
Okay,
So they blend together, but they are separate.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions, comments? And you expect to bring this back for our approval
Yes.
soon?
The next board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it will include, as Clerk Guthrie asked, what?
This
Oh,
PowerPoint
the time-
presentation as an addendum to this packet.
Right, and the timeline. Somewhere in this document, I read that once it's completed, it should not be distributed publicly?
Correct, because there's going to be potentially, we're talking about software and hardware, that is not for public knowledge, because that's internal stuff.
And also personal information
Correct.
for employees and the like?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you. So on that front, while this shell plan that has yet to be fleshed out is fine, I presume that when the final plan comes back in front of us, it'll be excluded from the packet or put into some, closed session or something where we could review it in that way. I assume that we're approving the framework.
Yeah.
I assume we'll approve the final version at some point, right?
So once you approve the plan to move forward and start building the annexes for each department, those won't be public knowledge. This can be public knowledge all day. There's nothing in it that's secretive. Once we do the annexes, I don't believe I'll bring those back. I'll bring you kind of a milestone of where we're at. A progression of where we're at, which so 6 months from now, I'll come back and let's say we have half the departments done. And I will bring, I'll for the next meeting, I will bring you a plan on training, exercising, and the additional documents you asked for, so you have a rough idea how long it'll take.
Okay. Further questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Item 14 on our agenda is comments from the public. This is the second opportunity for public comments. I don't have any green cards, but Mr. I can't believe I'm blanking on your name, Mr. Scales.
Changed my name.
Can't
Check
believe
innocent.
that.
I would just like to say thank you very much for nominating me and for approving me to rejoin the Planning Commission. And I really enjoyed listening to your discussions today. But most importantly, I love this township, and thank you for having me back.
Thank you. Are there others who would like to speak at this time? Then item 15 on our agenda is other matters and board member comments. Trustee Buzinski.
To follow Mr. Scales' lead, I just want to thank Supervisor for nominating me, Pro-Supervisor Tim, for outside meetings and also for the board for their discussion and support.
Thank you. Anything else? Then item 16 on our agenda is a closed session. We need a motion to enter closed session. Treasurer Shane?
I move to enter closed session pursuant to MCL 15-2681H and MCL 15.2431G to discuss confidential written legal opinion from the township attorney regarding the associated building contractors' prevailing wage litigation, and 2, pursuant to MCL 15-2681E to consult with the township attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in that litigation, 2/3 regarding that litigation.
Okay.
Support.
Been moved and supported. We need a roll call vote. Mr. Lemaster to go into closed session.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
trustee Wilson,
Yes.
trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
And thank all of our attendees tonight.